The morning sun was just starting to peek through the massive hangar doors when Darius pulled his truck into the private airfield. He was early, but that's how he liked it. 15 years in the aviation business had taught him that the quiet morning hours were perfect for the kind of detailed work that kept planes in the sky and people safe. He grabbed his toolbox from the passenger seat and checked his phone one more time. The message from his business partner flashed on the screen. Emergency call. Corporate jet. Hydraulic issue. Client needs it fixed ASAP. That was 3 hours ago, right after Darius had finished his morning meeting with potential investors for his consulting startup. He hadn't had time to change out of his dress shirt, so he'd just thrown his work coveralls over it. The cologne he'd put on for the investor meeting still lingered. Probably too strong for a day of working under an aircraft, but there was no helping it now. The jet sat in the middle of the hangar, sleek and expensive. Darius recognized the model immediately. This wasn't just any corporate jet. This was the kind of aircraft that cost more than most people's houses. He ran his hand along the smooth metal body as he walked toward the engine compartment, already mentally running through the possible issues, getting down on his creeper. He rolled himself under the belly of the aircraft. The overhead lights cast strange shadows on the metal above him, and he pulled out his flashlight to get a better look. His hands moved with practiced ease, checking connections, looking for leaks, feeling for anything out of place. That's when he heard the footsteps, sharp, quick clicking sounds. Heels on concrete. Hello? A woman's voice echoed through the hangar. Is anyone here? Darius didn't move right away. He was in the middle of tracing a hydraulic line, and he needed to keep his concentration. The footsteps got closer. Excuse me, I'm looking for the pilot or the crew. My flight is supposed to leave in 40 minutes. Darius slid out from under the jet and stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. The woman standing a few feet away was clearly not expecting him. She was dressed in an expensive business suit. Her dark hair pulled back perfectly, and she had that look about her. The kind of look that said she was used to things happening exactly when and how she wanted them to. Ma'am, Darius said, keeping his voice professional. Your pilot called in the maintenance issue this morning. I'm working on it now. The woman, who he'd later learn was named Diana Reeves, checked her watch with visible frustration. How long is this going to take? I have a meeting in Chicago at 2 o'clock. It's absolutely critical that I'm there. I'm moving as fast as I can, ma'am, but I need to make sure everything's safe before anyone gets in this aircraft. Diana walked closer, her heels echoing with each step. She was clearly stressed, tapping away at her phone with one hand while the other held a leather briefcase. Yes, of course. Safety first. I understand that. But her tone suggested she didn't really understand it at all. Or rather, she understood it but didn't want to accept it. Darius had seen this 100 times. People who paid for private jets weren't used to hearing the word wait. He rolled back under the aircraft, his flashlight beam dancing across the machinery above him. That's when he heard her voice again, closer now. She must have bent down slightly, probably trying to see what he was doing. You know, she said, and there was something almost conversational in her tone now, like she was trying to be friendly while she waited. You smell too good to be a mechanic. Darius's hand froze on the wrench he was holding. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and uncomfortable. He'd heard comments like this before. Different words, same message. You don't look like a mechanic. You sound too educated to be working with your hands. Are you sure you know what you're doing? But this one hit different somehow. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he focused on the bolt in front of him, turning it slowly, feeling the resistance. His jaw tightened, but he kept his face neutral. Professional. After 15 years, he'd gotten good at that. Diana seemed to realize something had shifted in the air. I just meant, most mechanics smell like oil, and... She trailed off, and Darius could hear her taking a few steps back. I had a meeting this morning, he said finally, his voice even and calm. Didn't have time to shower off the cologne before I got the call about your jet. Oh. There was an awkward pause. Well, I didn't mean anything by it. I was just making conversation. Darius slid back out from under the aircraft and stood up, meeting her eyes for the first time. He was tall and she had to look up slightly despite her heels. Ma'am, I need to concentrate on this repair. There's a seating area in the office over there if you'd like to wait somewhere more comfortable. Diana's phone rang, saving them both from the uncomfortable moment. She turned away, answering it with a crisp, Diana Reeves. As she walked toward the office area, Darius could hear her voice rising in frustration. "No, Richard, I'm telling you the plane is grounded. I don't know how long. This is not how I planned to start my day." Darius took a deep breath and rolled back under the jet, but now his mind was split between the work and the comment that was still bouncing around in his head. Too good to be a mechanic. What did that even mean? That mechanics were supposed to smell bad? That someone who took care of their appearance couldn't possibly be good with their hands? He thought about the meeting he'd just come from. 3 investors in expensive suits, sitting across from him in a downtown coffee shop. He'd pitched them his idea for an aviation consulting firm, showed them his credentials, his patents, his track record. They'd smiled, nodded, asked questions. But he could see it in their eyes. They weren't taking him seriously. One of them had even asked if he'd considered starting smaller, maybe just expanding his current mechanic business instead. Never mind that he had an engineering degree. Never mind that he'd spent 6 years in the military as an aviation specialist. Never mind that he'd solved problems that engineers with fancy offices couldn't figure out. In their eyes, he was just a mechanic, and apparently he smelled too good to be even that. His flashlight caught something that made him stop cold. There, just above his head, was the hydraulic line connection, and it wasn't right. Not at all. Someone had installed it wrong, and if this jet took off with that line in that condition, Darius felt his stomach drop. This wasn't a simple fix. This was a disaster waiting to happen. He slid out from under the jet and stood up, pulling out his phone to document what he was seeing. He took several photos, then made some notes. This was going to take hours to fix properly, maybe 6, maybe more, and he was going to have to tell Diana Reeves that her critical meeting in Chicago wasn't happening today. He walked toward the office area, where he could hear her voice still on the phone, sounding more frustrated by the minute. This conversation was going to go worse than the first one. He could already feel it. But here was the thing about being a mechanic, Darius thought as he approached the office door. His job wasn't to tell people what they wanted to hear. His job was to keep them alive. And whether Diana Reeves thought he smelled too good for it or not, he was damn good at his job. He knocked on the door frame, and Diana looked up from her phone call, her expression hopeful. Maybe she thought he was coming to tell her the plane was ready, but one look at his face and that hope started to fade. Diana held up one finger, signaling for Darius to wait while she finished her phone call. He stood in the doorway, his arms crossed, photos of the faulty hydraulic line still displayed on his phone screen. He could hear her voice getting sharper with whoever was on the other end. "Listen, Frank, I don't care what you have to do. Move the meeting to tomorrow morning. First thing. Because I said so, that's why. Oh, this is not negotiable." She ended the call with more force than necessary and looked up at Darius. "Okay, please tell me you've got good news." Darius stepped into the small office and pulled up one of the photos on his phone. "I wish I did, ma'am. But I need to show you something." Diana's face fell. She stood up from the desk and walked over, her heels clicking against the floor. "What is it?" "Your hydraulic system has a serious problem. Someone installed this line wrong during your last maintenance check. See this connection here?" He pointed to the image. "That's not seated properly. The pressure in flight would cause this to fail." "What does that mean exactly?" Diana asked, her voice tight. "It means," Darius said carefully, "that if you took off today, you'd likely lose hydraulic pressure mid-flight. Best case scenario, you'd have a very rough landing. Worst case, he didn't finish the sentence." He didn't need to. Diana's face went pale. She took the phone from his hand and stared at the image as if looking closer would somehow change what it showed. "How long to fix it?" 6 hours. "Maybe 7. I need to replace the entire line assembly, not just the connection, and I need to pressure test the whole system to make sure there aren't other issues." 6 hours. Diana's voice rose an octave. "That's impossible. I need to be in Chicago in 3 hours for the most important presentation of my career. This deal is worth $1 billion to my company. Do you understand what I'm saying?" $1 billion. Darius kept his voice steady. "Ma'am, I understand the urgency, but I can't send you up in an aircraft that isn't safe. It's not just about regulations. It's about your life." Diana started pacing, her hand pressed to her forehead. "Can you just, I don't know, tighten it or something? Make it secure enough for one flight? I'll get it properly fixed after I land." "No, ma'am. I can't do that. Can't or won't." The question hung in the air between them. Darius felt his jaw tighten again, but he kept his voice professional. "Can't. The integrity of the line is compromised." Tightening a faulty connection won't fix the underlying problem. Diana stopped pacing and turned to face him directly. Look, I don't mean to be difficult, but how do I know you're not being overcautious? Maybe you're trying to inflate the bill? I've heard about mechanics who do that to corporate clients. There it was. The accusation he'd been expecting. Darius had dealt with this before, too. The assumption that he was either incompetent or dishonest. Sometimes both. He took a slow breath. Ma'am, I'm going to walk you out to the jet and show you exactly what I'm talking about. You can take pictures yourself. Send them to any other aviation expert you want. They'll tell you the same thing I'm telling you. Something in his tone must have gotten through to her because Diana's defensive posture softened slightly. Fine. Show me. They walked back to the hangar together in tense silence. Darius grabbed a work light and extension cord, plugging it in near the aircraft. He positioned the light under the jet and gestured for Diana to look. You're going to need to get low to see it properly, he said. Diana hesitated, looking down at her expensive suit, then at the hangar floor. But to her credit, she crouched down, careful with her skirt. Darius pointed to the hydraulic line. See how this connector is at an angle? It should be flush. And here you can see the threading is stripped. That happened because whoever installed it cross-threaded it, then forced it. The metal is damaged. Diana leaned closer, squinting at the connection. She might not have been a mechanic, but even she could see something wasn't right about what she was looking at. Okay, she said quietly. I see what you mean. She stood up, brushing off her knees. Who did the last maintenance on this plane? According to the logs, it was done 2 weeks ago at a facility in Denver. Big operation. They probably had a new guy working on it. Someone who didn't double-check their work. Diana pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. I'm calling my aviation manager. This is unacceptable. We pay premium prices for premium service. While she made her call, Darius started pulling out the tools he'd need for the repair. He could hear Diana's voice echoing through the hangar, getting louder with each sentence. What do you mean they're highly rated? Rob, they almost killed me. I don't care if they've been in business for 30 years. Yes, I want you to file a formal complaint and find out who else services this region because we're never using them again. Darius wheeled over his larger toolbox and started laying out equipment. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his business partner, Terrence. How's it going with the emergency repair? Darius typed back quickly. Found a major issue. Gonna be here all day. Can you cover the inspection at Harbor Field? Already on it. Stay safe, brother. Diana finished her call and walked back over to where Darius was working. She looked exhausted suddenly, like all the fight had drained out of her. I had to cancel the meeting, she said. Pushed it to tomorrow. My CFO is furious with me. I'm sorry, Darius said, and he meant it. He understood what it felt like to have important plans fall apart. It's not your fault. Diana sat down on a nearby crate, something she probably never would have done an hour ago. Actually, you might have saved my life. So thank you. Darius nodded, continuing to organize his tools. Just doing my job, ma'am. Diana, she said. You can call me Diana. I think we're past formalities at this point. There was a long pause. Then Diana spoke again, her voice different now, less bossy, more human. That comment I made earlier. About the cologne. That was inappropriate. I'm sorry. Darius stopped what he was doing and looked at her. He hadn't expected an apology. It's fine. No, it's not fine, Diana insisted. I made an assumption based on, I don't know what. Your profession? The way you were dressed? It was wrong and I'm sorry. Darius wasn't sure what to say. In his experience, people rarely apologized for comments like that. They usually just got defensive or tried to explain it away. I appreciate that, he said finally. Can I ask you something? Diana said. You mentioned you had a meeting this morning. Before you came here? Yeah. Investor pitch for a consulting business I'm trying to start. Aviation consulting? That's right. Safety analysis, fleet management optimization, that kind of thing. I've got some patents on diagnostic systems that could save airlines millions in maintenance costs. Diana's eyebrows rose. That's impressive. How did the meeting go? Darius gave a dry laugh. Let's just say they smiled a lot and asked if I'd considered starting smaller, which is code for they didn't take you seriously. Pretty much. Diana was quiet for a moment, watching him work. I run a tech company. Started it 12 years ago in my garage. The first 50 investor meetings I took, you know what they asked me? If I had a boyfriend or husband who could co-sign on loans. if I was planning to have children soon, whether I understood the technical side of my own product. Darius glanced up at her, seeing her in a different light now. I'm not saying our experiences are the same, Diana continued, but I know what it feels like to walk into a room and have people decide who you are before you even open your mouth. Yeah, Darius said. I know that feeling pretty well. His phone rang. It was Terrence again. Hey, I'm bringing my crew over to help with the repair. We'll get it done faster with more hands. You sure? You've got the Harbor Field job. Already finished. We're 20 minutes out. Order us some lunch. Something good? We're gonna be there a while. Darius smiled as he hung up. He turned to Diana. My team's coming to help. We'll have you ready to fly first thing tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. if that works for you. I'll be here, Diana said. She stood up from the crate and brushed off her suit. I'm going to need to set up shop somewhere. Is there Wi-Fi in that office? Yeah, password's on the wall by the router. Perfect. I've got about 100 emails to send and calls to make. She started to walk away, then paused and turned back. Hey, Darius, what's your consulting company called? He was surprised she'd remembered his name from when he'd introduced himself that morning. Haven't settled on a name yet. Still in the planning stages. Well, when you do get it off the ground, send me your information. My company operates a fleet of 8 aircraft. We might have use for someone who actually knows what they're doing. With that, she walked back toward the office, leaving Darius standing by the jet with his tools. He wasn't sure if she was serious or just trying to be nice after their rocky start. But either way, something had shifted between them. He rolled back under the aircraft and got to work. 6 hours was a tight timeline, but with his team coming, they could make it happen. And maybe, just maybe, this day wasn't turning out to be a complete disaster after all. 3 hours into the repair, Diana sat in the small office staring at her laptop screen. She'd finished most of her urgent calls and emails, rescheduled tomorrow's presentation, and calmed down her furious CFO. Now she found herself with something she rarely had. Time to kill. Through the office window, she could see Darius and his team working on the jet. There were 4 of them now, all moving with the kind of coordination that came from years of working together. They didn't waste movements. No confusion about who was doing what. It was actually impressive to watch. Diana found herself typing Darius's name into the search bar, along with the words aviation and mechanic. She told herself it was just due diligence. After all, he was working on her plane. But really, she was curious. The first result that came up was a LinkedIn profile. Darius Wright, owner of Wright Aviation Services. She clicked on it. Bachelor's degree in aeronautical engineering from Georgia Tech. 6 years in the Air Force as an aviation maintenance officer. Multiple FAA certifications. Awards for safety innovations. 3 patents pending on diagnostic equipment. Diana sat back in her chair, feeling something uncomfortable settle in her stomach. This wasn't just some mechanic. This was someone who could probably be running an engineering department at Boeing if he wanted to. She kept scrolling. There were articles about him in trade publications. One headline read, Air Force veteran brings military precision to civilian aviation. Another was titled, Local business owners' innovation could revolutionize aircraft safety checks. Then she found a video interview from a local news station, recorded about 2 years ago. She clicked play and turned up the volume. Darius appeared on screen, younger looking but with the same steady confidence. The reporter was asking him about his business. We focus on what others miss, Darius was saying in the video. Big maintenance facilities have quotas, tight schedules. Sometimes things get overlooked. We take the time to do it right, every single time. Because when you're dealing with aircraft, there's no room for almost good enough. The reporter asked him about his background. You have an engineering degree and military experience. Why not pursue a corporate career? Why get your hands dirty? Darius smiled in the video, but Diana could see something behind it. A touch of frustration, maybe. I like solving problems. I like fixing things. And honestly, I'm good at it. I don't see my work as getting dirty. I see it as keeping people safe. Diana closed the laptop and looked back out the window. Darius was bent over the open engine compartment now, explaining something to one of his team members. The younger guy was nodding, taking notes on a tablet. She thought about her comment that morning. You smell too good to be a mechanic. God, how condescending that must have sounded. How many times had he heard variations of that? How many times had people looked at him and made assumptions about what he could or couldn't do? Diana stood up and walked out to the hangar. The smell of metal and hydraulic fluid was strong now. She approached the jet carefully, not wanting to get in the way. "How's it going?" she called out. Darius slid out from under the engine compartment, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We're making good progress. New line is installed. Now we're running pressure tests to make sure everything's holding." "Can I ask you something?" Diana said, then felt stupid because she was already asking something. "Sure." "Why aviation? With your background, you could do anything." Darius grabbed a water bottle and took a long drink before answering. "My grandfather was a Tuskegee airman." "Did you know about them? The black fighter pilots in World War II? "Yeah, my grandfather, he didn't fly. He was a mechanic. Kept those planes in the air when everyone said black men weren't smart enough, weren't capable enough. He died when I was 12, but before he passed, he told me something I never forgot." Diana waited, listening. "He said the men who flew got all the glory, but the men who fixed the planes, they were the ones who really kept everyone alive. He said there was honor in doing the work that nobody sees but everybody needs. I guess that stuck with me." "That's a beautiful story," Diana said softly. "Yeah, well." Darius set down his water bottle. "Not everyone sees it that way. Most people hear mechanic and think it means I couldn't do anything else. Like this was my only option. But you have patents. You're trying to start a consulting firm." Darius looked at her sharply. "You looked me up." "I did," Diana admitted. "After I saw your qualifications, I felt like an idiot for how I treated you this morning. You apologized already." "We're good. Are we, though?" Diana stepped closer. "Because I've been sitting in that office thinking about it, and I realized something. You handled my attitude with so much patience. More than I deserved. How often do you have to do that? Deal with people who underestimate you?" Darius was quiet for a moment. One of his team members called out from the other side of the jet. "Darius, can you check these readings?" "Give me a minute," he called back. Then to Diana, "You really want to know?" "I do. All the time," he said simply. "I walk into a hangar and people assume I'm there to empty the trash or sweep the floors. I show up to bid on contracts and they ask if my boss is coming. I go to industry conferences and people ask me which company I work for, like I couldn't possibly own one myself. And the thing is, I'm one of the best at what I do. My safety record is spotless. My clients trust me with their lives. But I still have to prove myself every single day in ways that other people don't." Diana felt her throat tighten. She knew that feeling, maybe not in the exact same way, but she knew it. "I built my company from nothing," she said. 12 years ago, I had an idea and $5,000 I'd saved. Now we're worth $800 million. And you know what? I still walk into board meetings and the men in suits talk to my male vice president instead of me. They still ask if I need help understanding the technical aspects of my own product. "So you get it," Darius said. "I get some of it, but I also have to acknowledge that I did to you exactly what those men do to me. I made assumptions. I was dismissive. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry." Terrence, Darius's business partner, walked over carrying a tablet. "Pressure tests are looking good, Dee. Everything's holding steady. We should be done in about 2 more hours, then we'll do the final safety check." "Good work," Darius said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Everyone, take 15. Grab some food." The team started dispersing toward the break area where they'd set up sandwiches and drinks. Terrence gave Diana a polite nod as he passed. "Ma'am." Diana and Darius were left standing by the jet. The hangar suddenly felt very quiet. "Can I ask you something now?" Darius said. "What made you start looking me up? Was it really just due diligence?" Diana considered lying, but decided against it. "Honestly, I was curious. I saw the way you worked, the way your team respected you, and I started wondering who you really were beyond my first impression. And what did you find? Someone who's probably had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition." Diana paused. "Someone who deserves a lot better than he's gotten." Darius smiled, but it was a tired smile. "I appreciate that. But I'm not looking for pity. That's not what I'm offering," Diana said quickly. "I told you earlier that my company operates 8 aircraft. I wasn't just being nice. We actually do need a good aviation consultant, someone who knows their stuff and won't cut corners. You already have maintenance contracts with companies that apparently let their mechanics cross-thread hydraulic lines. Yeah, I think we need something better." Diana pulled out her phone. "Give me your business email. I want to send you our fleet specifications. Take a look, see if it's something you'd be interested in. No pressure, no charity, just business." Darius studied her face, trying to figure out if she was serious. You understand that consulting fees aren't cheap, right? Especially for someone with my qualifications? Good. I don't trust cheap. I trust quality. Diana held out her phone. So, are you interested or not? Darius hesitated, then pulled out his own phone and they exchanged contact information. I'll look at what you send me. But I'm not making any promises. Fair enough, Terrence called out from across the hangar. Darius, we're ready to start the final assembly. Be right there. Darius turned back to Diana. You should probably head back to the office. The next part gets loud and there's going to be a lot of activity. Actually, Diana said, would it be okay if I stayed and watched? I'd like to understand more about how this all works. Darius looked surprised. Seriously? Seriously. If I'm going to hire you as a consultant, I should probably know what I'm consulting you about. A genuine smile crossed Darius's face, different from the polite professional one he'd been wearing all day. All right then. But stay back behind this line here. Safety protocols. Yes, sir, Diana said and meant it. For the next 2 hours, Diana watched as the team finished the repair. Darius explained things as they went, pointing out what they were checking and why it mattered. He talked about pressure tolerances and metal fatigue and fail-safe systems. Diana found herself actually interested, asking questions that made Darius pause and think before answering. By the time the sun started setting and the repair was complete, something had shifted between them. They weren't friends exactly, but they weren't strangers anymore either. They were two. The morning air was crisp and cool when Darius pulled into the hangar at 5:15. The sun wasn't up yet, just that soft pre-dawn light that made everything look gray and peaceful. He liked this time of day, always had. Something about the quiet before the world woke up made him feel like he could think clearly. He grabbed his checklist and coffee thermos from the passenger seat and headed into the hangar. The jet sat there waiting, looking perfect in the dim light. All the work from yesterday was invisible now, which was exactly how it should be. Good maintenance was like that. When it was done right, nobody knew it had happened. He was halfway through his pre-flight inspection when he heard a car pull up outside. Footsteps approached, slower than yesterday's sharp clicking. He looked up to see Diana walking in, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her business suit. She was carrying 2 coffee cups from a local shop. You're early, Darius said, checking his watch. I wasn't expecting you until 6. Couldn't sleep, Diana admitted, handing him one of the cups. Kept thinking about the presentation. And about whether the plane was really going to be okay. No offense, none taken. It's normal to be nervous after finding out your aircraft almost had a catastrophic failure. Darius took the coffee and checked the label. Black, 2 sugars. You remembered. I told you I would. They stood there for a moment, both sipping their coffee. It was strange, Darius thought, how comfortable the silence felt. Yesterday at this time, they'd been practically at each other's throats. Now here they were, sharing coffee before dawn like old friends. So what are you checking? Diana asked, walking closer to the jet. Everything we touched yesterday plus everything we didn't. I'm going through the entire system one more time. Pressure readings, connection integrity, fluid levels. Then I'll run the engine and make sure everything sounds right. Sounds right? Diana raised an eyebrow. That seems pretty subjective. Darius smiled. You'd be surprised. After 15 years of listening to engines, you develop an ear for it. Every aircraft has its own sound, its own rhythm. When something's off even slightly, you can hear it. Like a musician tuning an instrument. Exactly like that. Diana set her coffee cup down on a nearby workbench. Can I help with anything? I know I'm not qualified, but I'd like to be useful. Darius thought about it for a second. You can read off the checklist items for me. That way I can focus on the actual inspection. Really? Yeah, why not? You're the one trusting your life to this aircraft. Might as well understand what makes it safe. For the next 45 minutes, Diana called out items from the checklist while Darius worked through each one. She asked questions about everything, and Darius found himself enjoying the teaching aspect of it. She was a quick learner and her questions were smart ones. Okay, fire up the engine, Darius said finally. Let's hear how she sounds. Diana climbed into the cockpit with him and watched as he went through the startup sequence. The engine roared to life and the whole aircraft vibrated with power. Darius closed his eyes, listening. What are you hearing? Diana asked over the noise. Everything I'm supposed to and nothing I'm not. He opened his eyes and started checking the instrument panel. See these readings? All in the green. Pressure steady. Temperature rising at the expected rate. She's perfect. He shut down the engine and they climbed back out. Darius signed off on the final inspection paperwork and handed Diana a copy. You're cleared for takeoff. Have a safe flight. Thank you, Diana said, and she meant it in a way that went beyond just the repair work. For everything. For being honest yesterday, for doing the work right, for being patient with me. Just doing my job. No, Diana said firmly. You went above and beyond. And I won't forget that. Her pilot arrived a few minutes later, a friendly guy in his 50s named Captain Reynolds. He walked around the jet with Darius asking technical questions about the repair. Darius could tell Reynolds was good at his job, thorough and careful. That made him feel better about Diana's flight. She's in better shape now than before the problem, Reynolds said, looking over the inspection report. Appreciate you catching this. Could have been real bad. That's why we do what we do, Darius said. Diana was about to board when she turned back. Hey, did you get a chance to look at the fleet specifications I sent you last night? I did. And? Darius hesitated. It's interesting. You've got some older aircraft in there that are probably due for comprehensive safety overhauls, and your maintenance schedule seems pretty standard, but I could optimize it to reduce downtime and costs. So you're interested? I'm interested in hearing more. But I need to be straight with you, Diana. Consulting fees for this kind of work, for a fleet that size, we're talking about a significant contract. 6 figures minimum for the first year. Diana didn't even blink. Send me a proposal. Detailed with everything you'd recommend. I'll have my team review it and we can set up a proper meeting next week. You're serious about this? Completely serious. Yesterday you saved my life. Today I watched you work with a level of care and precision that I rarely see in any industry. Why wouldn't I want someone like that consulting for my company? Darius felt something he hadn't felt in a long time about his business. Hope. Real hope. Okay, I'll have a proposal to you by Friday. Perfect. Diana shook his hand, a firm, business-like grip. I'll see you next week. He watched the jet taxi out of the hangar and eventually disappear into the sky. The sun was fully up now and the hangar felt warmer. His phone buzzed. It was Terrence. How'd the final check go? Perfect. She's in the air now. Good. Hey, you see the email that came through this morning? Haven't checked yet. Why? Diana's assistant sent over a request for a detailed service proposal. This is legit, Dee. This is the kind of client that could change everything for us. Darius walked back to his truck and pulled out his laptop. Sure enough, there was an email from Diana's executive assistant with detailed specifications for all 8 aircraft in their fleet. There was also a note at the bottom. Ms. Reeves has requested an expedited review process for your proposal. Please include comprehensive safety audit recommendations for the entire fleet. Budget has been pre-approved for necessary services. Budget pre-approved. Darius read that line 3 times. That meant Diana had already talked to her finance people. She wasn't just being polite or guilty. She was actually serious. His phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. Hello? Darius, right? This is Robert Chen from Pacific Aviation Solutions. Diana Reeves gave me your name. Said you're the best aviation consultant on the West Coast. I've got a fleet of corporate aircraft that needs a complete safety review. Are you taking new clients? Darius almost dropped his phone. Yes, sir. I am. Great. Can you meet next Tuesday to discuss scope and pricing? Absolutely. 2 more calls came in over the next hour. Both referrals from Diana. By lunchtime, Darius had 3 potential clients wanting to talk about major contracts. He sat in his truck staring at his phone in disbelief. Terrence called again. Dude, what is happening? We've got 4 inquiry emails in the last 2 hours, all of them mentioning Diana Reeves as a reference. She's making calls, Darius said slowly. She's actually out there telling people about us. This is insane. Good insane, but insane. That evening, Darius's phone buzzed with a text message from Diana. Presentation went perfectly. Deal is moving forward. Thank you for getting me there safely. Also, I've reached out to a few colleagues who might need your services. Hope that's okay. Darius smiled and typed back. More than okay. Thank you. You earned it. By the way, I meant what I said about that proposal. Take your time and do it right. I want comprehensive recommendations, not a rush job. You've got until Monday, not Friday. See you next week. Darius set his phone down and looked out the window of his truck. The hangar was quiet now, just him and the usual evening sounds. He thought about his grandfather. About those Tuskegee Airmen mechanics who kept planes flying when the world said they couldn't. They'd done their work in obscurity, never getting the recognition they deserved. But they'd done it anyway with pride and precision because they knew it mattered. Darius had spent years doing the same thing, working hard, being excellent, hoping someone would notice, and yesterday someone finally had. Not because he'd compromised or played small, but because he'd stood firm in his expertise and integrity. He pulled out his business plan, the one he'd been shopping around to investors for months. Time to update it. Time to think bigger, because for the first time in a long time, thinking big didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt like a real possibility. His phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Diana. P.S. My board meeting is next Wednesday. If your proposal is ready by then, I'd like you to present it yourself. They should hear directly from you why we need to make this investment. Fair warning, though, they're tough, but I think you can handle tough. Darius laughed out loud in his empty truck. Yeah, he could handle tough. He'd been handling tough his whole life. He typed back a simple response. I'll be there. And he would be. Not as someone grateful for the opportunity, not as someone lucky to be in the room, but as someone who'd earned his place at that table through years of skill, dedication, and refusing to be anything less than excellent. The sun was setting over the hangar. Wednesday morning came faster than Darius expected. He'd spent the last 6 days preparing for this moment, putting together the most detailed proposal he'd ever created. Every page was backed up with data, every recommendation supported by research. He'd included a full safety audit of Diana's fleet, cost-benefit analyses, and a 5-year maintenance optimization plan. Terrence had reviewed it twice. This is solid, man. Better than solid. This is the kind of work that gets you noticed. Now Darius stood in the lobby of Diana's headquarters, a glass and steel building in downtown Seattle. He wore his best suit, the one he'd bought 2 years ago for investor meetings. His presentation materials were loaded on a tablet, and he had backup copies on a flash drive just in case. Diana's assistant, a young woman named Kelly, greeted him at the front desk. Mr. Wright? Ms. Reeves is expecting you. The board is just finishing up their previous agenda item. Can I get you some water or coffee while you wait? Water would be great, thanks. Kelly led him to a small conference room adjacent to the boardroom. Through the glass walls, Darius could see Diana presenting something to a group of about 10 people. They all looked exactly how he'd expected. Expensive suits, serious faces, the kind of people who made decisions involving millions of dollars before breakfast. His phone buzzed. A text from Terrence. You got this, brother. Remember, they need you more than you need them. Darius smiled. That wasn't quite true, but he appreciated the sentiment. The boardroom door opened and Diana stepped out. She was wearing a sharp navy suit and looked every bit the CEO. But when she saw Darius, her professional mask softened into a genuine smile. Ready? She asked. As I'll ever be. Good. Quick heads up. My CFO, Richard, he's going to push back on the numbers. It's just what he does. Don't take it personally. And my VP of Operations, Patricia, she's going to ask a lot of technical questions. She used to be an engineer, so she knows her stuff. Appreciate the warning. Diana lowered her voice. One more thing. Just be yourself. Don't try to soften your message or downplay your expertise. These people respond to confidence backed by competence. You've got both. They walked into the boardroom together. All eyes turned to Darius. He could feel them sizing him up, making their initial judgments. He'd been in this position before, but it never got easier. Everyone, Diana said, taking her seat at the head of the table. This is Darius Wright from Wright Aviation Services. He's the consultant I told you about, the one who caught the critical safety issue on our jet last week. Darius, go ahead. Darius connected his tablet to the room's display screen and pulled up his first slide. Thank you for having me. I know your time is valuable, so I'll get right to it. Your fleet has a problem. Not one problem. Actually, several. And they're costing you money, risking safety, and creating liability exposure that keeps me up at night. He saw a few board members sit up straighter. Good. He had their attention. 2 weeks ago, one of your aircraft had a hydraulic line that was improperly installed during routine maintenance. If Ms. Reeves had flown that day, there's a strong probability she'd have experienced system failure mid-flight. But here's the thing. That wasn't a random occurrence. That was a symptom of a larger problem in how corporate aviation maintenance is typically handled. For the next 30 minutes, Darius walked them through his findings. He showed them data on maintenance failures across the industry. He explained how larger facilities often prioritize speed over thoroughness. He broke down exactly what he'd found during his preliminary review of their fleet. Aircraft 3 and 5 are overdue for comprehensive safety audits. Aircraft 7 has a recurring avionics issue that's been repeatedly patched instead of properly fixed. And your maintenance scheduling across the entire fleet is inefficient. You're grounding aircraft for routine work that could be consolidated, and you're missing predictive maintenance opportunities that would prevent expensive emergency repairs. Richard, the CFO, leaned forward. Mr. Wright, your proposal includes a first-year cost of $320,000. That's significantly higher than what we currently spend on maintenance oversight. That's correct, Darius said calmly. And in year 2, I project you'll save $400,000 in reduced emergency repairs, optimized scheduling, and longer equipment lifespans. By year 3, you'll be operating at a net savings of approximately $600,000 annually. I've included the detailed breakdown in Section 4 of the proposal. Richard flipped through his copy of the proposal. These projections seem optimistic. They're conservative, actually, based on data from similar fleet sizes in comparable industries. I can show you the source documentation if you'd like. Patricia, the VP of Operations, spoke up. I'm looking at your safety audit recommendations. You're suggesting we ground 2 aircraft for comprehensive overhauls. That's going to impact our operation significantly. It will, Darius agreed, for about 3 weeks per aircraft. But the alternative is risking catastrophic failure. And I can work with your operations team to schedule the overhauls during your lowest usage periods to minimize disruption. Have you done this kind of comprehensive fleet management before? Patricia asked. There was skepticism in her voice, but also genuine curiosity. Not at this scale, Darius admitted. My company is relatively small, but I've spent 15 years in aviation maintenance and safety. I hold more certifications than anyone else you'll interview for this position. And I'm not going to stand here and promise you something I can't deliver. What I can promise is that I'll treat your fleet like it's carrying my own family, because that's how I approach every job. The room was quiet for a moment. Then one of the other board members, an older man Darius hadn't been introduced to, spoke up. Diana told us you saved her life last week, that you could have just done a quick patch job and sent her on her way, but you didn't. Why not? Would have been easier, less work for you? Darius met his eyes. Because that's not who I am. My grandfather was a Tuskegee airman mechanic. He taught me that the work we do matters even when nobody's watching, especially when nobody's watching. I can't control what other people do, but I can control my own standards, and my standard is excellence every single time. The older man nodded slowly, something like respect crossing his face. Diana spoke up. I'm recommending we approve this contract, not just because Darius saved my life, though that certainly helps his case, but because in 20 years of running this company, I've learned that you pay for quality one way or another. Either you pay up front for the best people, or you pay later in failures, lawsuits, and catastrophes. I'd rather pay up front. Richard cleared his throat. I'd like to negotiate the payment structure. Perhaps a performance-based model with quarterly reviews. I'm open to that, Darius said, as long as the performance metrics are clearly defined and fair. They spent another 20 minutes discussing details, terms, and logistics. Darius held his ground on the important points and showed flexibility where it made sense. By the time the meeting wrapped up, they'd agreed in principle to a 1-year contract with options for renewal. As the board members filed out, several of them stopped to shake Darius's hand. Patricia pulled him aside. I'm going to be honest. When Diana first mentioned hiring you, I was skeptical. We've worked with a lot of consultants who talk a good game, but don't deliver. But you know your stuff. I'm looking forward to working with you. Appreciate that, Darius said. I won't let you down. Diana walked him back to the lobby. That was perfect. You handled Richard's pushback beautifully. And you won Patricia over. That's not easy to do. Does this mean I got the contract? The board still needs to take a formal vote, but yes, you got it, Diana smiled. Congratulations, Darius. This is just the beginning. Thank you. For all of this. For the opportunity. For the referrals, for believing in me. I didn't do you any favors, Diana said firmly. You earned this. Every bit of it. I just made sure you got in the room. What you did once you were there, that was all you. 6 months later, Darius stood in the new office space for Wright Aviation Consulting. It wasn't huge, but it was professional, clean, legitimate, the kind of place that said his company was here to stay. Terrence walked in carrying a box of supplies. Last load from the truck. We're officially moved in. Can't believe this is real, Darius said, looking around at the space. Believe it. You've got 4 major clients, a growing team, and more work than we can handle. Speaking of which, when's that new engineer starting? Monday, recent grad from Howard. Couldn't get interviews anywhere despite graduating top of her class. Sound familiar? Terrence laughed. Very familiar. We're going to build something good here, aren't we? That's the plan. Darius's phone buzzed. A text from Diana. Saw the article about your company in Aviation Weekly. Well deserved. Proud to be your first major client. Also, I'm speaking at a Women in Tech conference next month about unconscious bias, using our story as a case study. Hope that's okay, Darius smiled and typed back. More than okay. Tell the truth, even the uncomfortable parts. Always. He looked out the window of his new office at the city below. Somewhere out there, his grandfather's spirit was probably smiling. The work nobody sees, but everybody needs. That's what he'd said. That's what mattered.